Thank you. Thanks, guys. Nice to see you all here. I'm Joanna Popper. I'm the Global Head of Location-Based Entertainment for Virtual Reality at HP. Really excited to be hosting this fantastic panel all about location-based entertainment. So we'll go down the line and everyone will introduce themselves and then we'll jump into what we're here to talk about.
Sounds good. So I'm Mingail. I work at Secret Location, part of an Entertainment One company. Started out in LBE VR a few years ago when I was working for Cineplex and helped to bring The Void to Canada and work on some other initiatives for the cinema business, esports, and their family entertainment center brands. At the Secret Location side, we work on content creation and development. For LBE, we are creating content actually for 2019 for free roam specifically. And for distribution, we represent various studios to distribute to out of home. And also have various products, which I won't get into all the details, that was actually just highlighted in Forbes a couple days ago.
Nice. Thanks to Charlie Fink.
Yes.
Not to be confused with Laura, but I'm Lauren, messenger.
In terms of names. Laura, Lauren, Lynn, and Ben.
Exactly. So I'm with Nomadic. We're a location-based entertainment company. We are a modular and fully tactile experience, walkable experience. My background is primarily in consumer behavior research, marketing, brand design, as well as customer experience. So I focus quite a bit on that. And my team is also responsible for opening the venue. So we call it the physical side of the actual experience, as well as what the consumer and customer experience generally overall. So
I'm Lynn Rosenthal, and I'm opening my first LBE location. Yay! Next week, finally. We're going to be opening in JFK, Terminal 4. And we're really excited. We're working with HP and VRsenal, and we're very excited about bringing sort of blissful experiences to a very stressful, anxious space.
Amen. I'm Ben Davenport. I'm the CEO of VRsenal, and we've been focused on the LBE VR space for just over about 2 years. We're deployed in over 5 countries and throughout the United States, and learned a lot along the way. We've got products ranging from backpack-based, free roam, and all the way to really small footprint products like our Holocube solution, which is really aimed to be the red box of VR. Small footprint, completely unattended, room scale VR, fully automated, which is something that we really feel that the industry needs to be able to take advantage of existing spaces and foot traffic. So we've been out there doing that for quite a while, and just kind of poking our head up into the public sphere in this year. We like to say that we are the most competent unknown VR company around. So that's...
It's your coming out panel.
That's the coming out panel. That's exactly it.
go on, Ben.
Awesome. So on the HP side, I actually joined HP about 5 months ago. So we really excited about this team I'm on. It's really a startup within obviously a really well-known company. So for those of you who didn't know, HP actually, one of our first clients was Walt Disney. Back in the 1930s, and so have long history around computing, long history around the entertainment space. And so our team is really essentially operating as a startup within a large company. So we have the backing of the mothership, but we have those. We hope to have sort of flexibility and nimbleness and that you need to be working in the VR space. And so when we think about this is the future of computing, HP is all about inventing and reinventing the future and technology. So it's really important to us to be front and center and building that together with great companies and great partners like you guys and many of you guys that are here in the audience. And so we're B2B focused, and we have 4 verticals that we're primarily focused on right now, which are architecture, engineering, construction, location-based entertainment, which is what we're here talking about. Then we have training, and actually to plug one of my colleagues, Jay Frazier, he's doing a talk today at 5 o'clock on military and first responder training, and then our last vertical is healthcare. So that's how we're focused, and we're working with some great partners out there in the Expo too, both Liv, who has a Beat Saber mixed reality experience, as well as Modsis, who has a fun beach volleyball experience in VR. And if you're nice to me, I might show you the video of me falling on my ass while playing.
Do it.
It's pretty funny. So, okay, so let's LBE has become, one of the hottest terms in VR in, say, the last 12 months, really explosion of a focus around location-based entertainment. What do you guys think drives that? Why is that the area that you're choosing to focus on in your VR adventures?
Well, I think that everyone was excited about VR, especially even 2 years ago, just in general. And then people started to realize, hey, it's kind of expensive. The content pipeline is not as deep as we would have liked. So they didn't actually go out and buy those headsets just yet, although there are estimates in terms of how many people have it for at home. But it's a great opportunity to try before you buy. And it's a great opportunity for operators as well to have something that's very unique, to fill that itch for something that's very different from just simply going to a movie or going to a simple escape room.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think, some of the challenges, as you mentioned, sort of with both the content side of things and fulfilling that need, but also solving a lot of the issues from, dare we say, sort of a retail perspective. You kind of hear that, retail is dying a lot, or those might be some comments. But I also think it's a matter of the consumer's opportunity to experience something that they haven't before, and to really see some of the great things that some of the developers and folks in the audience that have been working on. I think that ultimately you're sort of melding these two worlds of people being at home and bringing that to the forefront, as well as being able to show them something that they've never experienced before. So I think that is ultimately, right, all of our goals is to create this very imaginative and amazing form of entertainment. So
Absolutely. We think it's a great opportunity, especially in airports, because JFK, for example, has a 3 to 4 hour dwell time, or in a mall, you have 20 minutes. They have 21 million people coming through that space. 1 in every 15 people that enters the United States comes through JFK Terminal 4. So we want to go to where the people are. We think that now's the right time because there's so many great magical experiences. I mean, who doesn't want to be underwater with a whale, or fly through the universe? They're just walk through Jurassic Park. It's all magical now, and so we have sort of a luxury retail play, and we feel like we're, as VR curators, we're able to bring sort of the VR curious in and reach the masses this way in airports. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really true. I think one thing I've noticed in VR is people who are 40, 50 years old and jaded, acting like 10-year-olds. Whenever you can get somebody who's 50 years old giggling, there's money to be made. There's an audience. There's a market there, because
Money and joy.
it's just one of those things where you you've seen it all and done it all after a while. It's the worst thing about growing up. You're like, when I grow up, I'm gonna eat all the ice cream I can, and then you grow up and you've eaten all the ice cream you can, and it's not that fun anymore. And so I think there's a space in the LBE market. The original the original arcades in the '80s ultimately were outcompeted by the consoles at home. And with Netflix variety and with screens getting larger and larger in people's homes, they're finding less reason to go out to traditional location-based entertainment, because you can get the exact type of content you want right on this huge screen in your living room. And so that's leaving a hole, and what's really being looked for is something unique. And VR is not just a gimmick on an old medium. It's a new medium, and it allows for people to have the type of magical experiences Lynn was talking about. But as you mentioned, it's expensive to do this at home, and so quite often people are like, the media's done a very good job. The hype cycle that we went through, with putting it into the public consciousness, it's out there. It has a big chunk of mind share. But a lot of people are like, I don't know if I want to spend that on it without really knowing what it's about. And so I think giving people an opportunity to, when they see it, they're like, that's what I've been hearing about. And where they can, with a very low investment, try it and become convinced.
Right.
I think that's what's driving a lot of the interest and the market for LBE VR.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that most people will have their first great VR experience in a location-based entertainment venue. So I want to check in with the audience quickly. Just, I obviously have my long list of questions, but what is it that you guys want to make sure that we talk about and cover? Are there any topics that are particularly hot so that we make sure that we cover them?
Just shout it out.
Economics, so monetization.
Yep.
Customer onboarding.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Shout 'em out. Future-proofing LBE.
Future-proofing. Is future-proofing real? Can you future-proof anything really?
I use the phrase
I mean, because it's all about change, right? I mean, like life.
when video consoles came along, arcades went away. How are we going to do that?
Got it. Okay. So loosely looking at future-proofing, monetization, customer experience. AR versus VR. Platforms. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Business plans? You guys all brought your business plans to
Yes?
Do you have your Excels? Okay. Yes. Awesome.
What I mean is the lack of business plans, people who are running small industries,
Yeah.
there's a lack of knowledge of how to set up a business in addition to making money small versus.
Got it. So kind of the mom and pop and sort of like, how do we spread the professionalism and the business sense through the industry? Awesome. Okay, cool. All right. So to the point around customer experience, for those of you guys who've opened and beyond, but for those of you who've opened to the public, whether it's pop-ups, or other types of experience, what are some of the biggest lessons learned that you've taken away so far? And everything's great when you talk about it or make PowerPoints or present it, right, to investors. But when you actually open to the customers, what are some of your most important lessons learned?
Is that for me?
It's for whoever wants to take it. You've opened to public, right? So
Yeah, I think so. We've done a couple pop-ups. We're opening our first venue in the fall, so we are in the same boat, not closely as you. It's sort of your next week, so you're in the final stretch. But I think customer experience, that we can talk sort of on a top level, and we can get really into the tactical. When you start talking about business plans, I think there are many types of customers, right? You have your business-to-business customers, whether it's your content developer or your partners in that sense, or your venue partners. But you also have what you're talking about on an operational level. I mean, there's a lot of truth in the fact that location-based entertainment requires a staffing model that is not typical of any other sort of arcade situation or of other situations that you see sort of like maybe in a arcade mode. But I think that taking a look at the larger customer experience in terms of what that looks like both on the content side as well as explaining it is incredibly critical. So like, how do you get, to your point, when people have all this time, like how do you get people to come in and understand like what is VR, right? That's always the first question we always get, like what are you doing here?
Right.
So I know that is also a challenge in terms of pulling them in,
I hope not.
I hope not either, but it is. It can be, sometimes.
Well, I can speak to monetization. I think it's an easy answer. You go to where the people are, right? So we're rolling out in not only airports, but high traffic destinations globally. And if you're somewhere where there are 21 million people and they have 3 hours of dwell time, I kind of feel like they're going to have a drink, they're going to have time to shop. What else is there to do? And so, that's why we chose to start with airports. We're actually the first company to ever launch in an airport. So check back in a few weeks and I'll let you know how that worked out.
And just to layer on to sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to talk to your point on needing a lot of attendance with every location. So Ben and I and Joanna have worked together to provide a unique experience. Ben's already been doing it, but now we're using HP's mixed reality headsets, which are amazing because you don't need trackers and you just the Z workstation is so incredible. Right now it's certainly the best consumer experience. I think it's going to be a home run. God, I can't speak. But we've created something where we don't need an attendant. So we have brand ambassadors. We have 12 stations and 2 people working. That's so unlike an IMAX model where they have a lot of employees. We don't need that.
Because that was my question, I figured how many could you put through in an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ben, talk about some of the stuff you've done around creating that autonomous model and what you've learned along the way, because I know that you've certainly taken the lessons and brought them back into continuing to iterate, which I think we're all certainly doing in VR. But I'd love to hear some of your lessons.
The whole industry's doing that, and we didn't pivot into LBE. We started out aimed at it 2.5 years ago, and we rolled out. Just like everybody else rolled out models with high staffing costs and requirements. And, we found that it's not just the costs that become prohibitive, but ultimately, when you have employees that turn over every 3 months and you have a highly technical product, and it's not a good recipe for, as somebody asked about business plans, it's not one of those things that really makes the business plan work. And so as we went along, we saw that it just didn't work out like it did on paper. It took a lot of manpower, it took a lot of hours, and it really needed hours from people who cared. And quite often, at family fun centers and these things, it's being staffed by pretty low-paid, low-skilled employees, and they just don't care. And so somebody walks up and like you said, what are you doing? What is this?
Yeah, that's the explanation, right?
I mean, they just walk up and they're just standing there looking at the thing, and the attendant's sitting there looking on their phone, and they're like standing there for like a few seconds, and then they walk away. And they don't know what to do. They've got a card in their hand that they've been playing all these video games with, and they know what to do when they walk up to a video game, and there's this card, and it's lit up. They know they swipe it, and they play it. Here they get up, and they're just like, I don't know what to do, and that guy's not paying attention, or he's on a bathroom break or something. And so quite often, we sat there and watched. We did a lot of monitoring, sat for months and months, and just watched the installations. And we just saw that the humans, the VR technology worked rather well, but the humans, did not. And so we said, well, we've got to automate this. And that proved to be quite the task. And because when you ask, like, what are some of the things you've learned? We've learned that humans don't stand where you think they are, where they would. I'll get it. They don't, and they don't face the direction you think they're going to face. And we spent quite a bit of time where we set up a full automated system. People walked up with that card. We had that nice glowing card reader, and you swiped it, and on came audio instructions. Welcome to Holocube. Step into the play area and pick up the controllers. And so, that's what we wanted to have happen. No one did it. Then we told, it went on to tell them how to put their hands through it and go over and get the headset. And we thought this is going to work great. Nobody did it. Everybody walked straight to the headset. And so then we put up a big sign. We had the screen flash. We turned up the volume. Still no one did it. Finally said, this isn't a computer programming problem. This is a human programming problem, and we're not going to reprogram them.
You're not going to reprogram.
We're not going to reprogram the humans.
Not taking that on?
That's not our goal. I mean, we're putting on the headset and everything, but we're not going to do it. And so we finally just had to learn, this is not an engineering problem, and it is not a programming problem. It is a human problem. And
opportunity, right?
Right. We have to look at that and say, this is what they want to put that headset on.
Yeah.
Let's start there. Let's give them what they want.
That's cool.
And so a lot of that is what we just had to start learning, is that we tried to approach everything originally from a technological standpoint. We found out most of these solutions are very human, and most of the problems are human. What the operators want, what the customer wants, and a lot of the issues are human, and they need to be looked at from that viewpoint.
And I think just to help with those efficiencies and to help to reduce costs, there's some great platforms like your platform, there's Springboard, there's User Venue, our platform, just to help to make things cheaper, so to reduce the human error or humans required to run those experiences. it's important to think of just a few different parts of the business, though. You have the content creators that also need to monetize.
Right.
And it's very costly to be able to monetize content where they have to reach out to individual operators to develop individual deals, license the content, monitor,
Correct.
make sure that they're getting paid appropriately and on
Right.
time. So I think it's important to also find solutions like a VRSpark, like a blockchain-based
Well, tell them
platform.
what the platform is.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure everyone knows.
So VRSpark, it's actually launching this summer from Secret Location. Thank you for letting me talk about it.
Sure.
It is a blockchain-based rights management platform. So it really helps solve a lot of the challenges or the pain points when it comes to content licensing. So while Secret Location actually takes on licensing content for creators and our partners, it also helps with their ability to actually see consumption in real time at the different regions, for example, where that content is being consumed. So it helps consumers or content creators get smarter about consumer behavior and also helps them to make sure that they're maximizing or they have the insights to maximize the revenue they're making.
So on the content side, what have you guys found is content that sort of drives first-time users? What drives repeat business? Have you found any? Are there any patterns that we've seen so far? I mean, there's always a lot of conversation around big Hollywood IP versus originals or native VR experiences. Do you think that we're far enough along to make any generalizations about what you found works and doesn't work well?
Well, I think, companies like The Void, for example, they've done a great job at leveraging big IP. Star Wars can't get
one of the
bigger
biggest
than
IPs,
that. Ghostbusters, of course. So it helps people understand the world that they're going to step into. But there's also that extra layer of communications. It's funny because three of us are started in marketing, and communication is very important of like what people can actually experience when they put on that headset and get in there. But I also think when you have clear communication of what that experience could be, it just needs to be a big idea and something that resonates with what consumers actually want to be able to do they can't do anywhere else. So I think it's big idea over big IP.
Yeah, the IP definitely helps, right? It gets people interested. I think people who don't initially engage in VR, that The Void does do a great job in terms of that larger movie IP. I think it sort of narrows the gap in terms of explaining what people are about to experience. But I also think the content portion and being able to have multiple pieces of content and different experiences that people can have are sort of this larger engagement model where people, they might experience Star Wars, for example, and then they'll come back and experience something else as a game with their family. So I think very critical in terms of getting location-based entertainment to a higher level is being able to have all of these different types of experiences, on a larger scale.
So we've selected our content based on where we're launching. And I'm a person who's on a plane once or twice a week. Frequently with very long layovers. And this actually came to me when I was in an airport and stressed out and looking around and everybody's anxious. I sneak into the club and somebody's changing a diaper of a kid and they're serving cheap Chablis and I'm getting a public massage. I was just trying to think of I just wish I was in VR. And then I thought, this is where the people are. So what do you need to take those stressed out people, that have just, they have a long layover, there's nothing to do, there's no entertainment, and that experience that used to be for the 1% in those airport lounges no longer exists. So we're curating content that makes you feel blissful and euphoric and is fun, and we don't have shooters or zombies in an airport. It's just, really.
You're not doing Airplane the movie in VR.
No. No zombies.
No flight simulators.
Vacation simulators coming out soon. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's a fun one.
I do think that when we've all been to the VR trade shows and the demos.
There's many.
And the demos. And so a lot of VR experiences have ended up being exactly that, experiences. They're one-offs, and they require a steady stream of VR virgins to make the business plan work. And to get around that for the long term, you have to do one of two things. You either constantly have to be, releasing new content like you guys are planning to, so that you have multiple experiences, or you have to have content, actual real games that actually engage people and have multiple levels and have progression and have things where people can they have a reason to keep coming back. It's not just an experience. That will work and has worked in some LBE markets that, while most people haven't seen it. All you got to do is show them VR and it's amazing. But unless you're in a place like Disney or in some place where there's a
The
constant...
Voids model. It's
Right.
tourist areas where there's people ready to spend money.
Correct.
Right.
But if you're going to go into all those common places all over the world and the United States, you're going to have something that's going to give people a reason to come back, and that's going to either be new content or content with depth.
Yeah, that replayability is a huge, huge key. That's something that we've focused on in terms of how do you re-engage people with the same sort of platform of content, right? And that replayability and offering people the opportunity, that wow moment whenever you do something really rad in VR and you take off your headset and you're just like, oh my God, what the fuck was that? Like, that's amazing. Sorry. You guys all know what I'm talking about. You've all experienced it. But on a frequent
Brand
basis.
safe panel.
But I think it's super critical to be able to have that replayability and the gamification for people to engage both out of the game, right? That if other people are within a game playing, like to be able to engage with them outside of the game, as well as you engage with others that you are in a multiplayer experience, if that's what you're doing, or singular or not. So really critical.
And I think that the people that you play with impact the story as well. It doesn't necessarily even need to be a traditional game or traditional VR game that doesn't exist, but some sort of cinematic experience that is social, that actually allows you to open up different avenues through exploration of that space is definitely content that could work as well.
Right.
Cool. So when you think about, we're talking about the sort of the marriage of content and innovation and technology. What are some? I think here we have. We have content creators in the audience. We have probably people who have really exciting new technology that you want you guys to be using in your operations. How do you think about the best way to sort of marry the content, the innovation, the storytelling, the technology, and what is it that you find really works in that area?
Well, there's so much you can do.
And how can maybe partnerships work the best together in that area?
For the types of blockchain we talked about for Visa or Spark, but I'm excited about what you can do with artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to content. Even when it comes to free roam, for example, if an operator has one person show up to an experience that requires 7 other people to play, they don't want to turn that one person away. You want to leverage artificial intelligence to create an experience that they can still go through, so you could monetize that experience that way, and perhaps like the characters in that experience could even remember that player when they come back as well. So I'd say AI and blockchain are ones.
Yeah. We worked at Tribeca with a team from Baobab Studios and Nexus Forward and Matthias Celleberg on Jack, and it was that interesting combination of immersive theater plus facial software recognition plus mocap. Plus free roam backpacks. They use the HPC backpack, and it was really interesting because then you think about, well, how do you leverage throughput, and how does that scale, and is it just a piece that maybe goes to a museum, or can you take it out? And certainly an AI element would help it scale.
Definitely.
So you don't need to while it's amazing to have that improv actor in the space, it would also be amazing to capture that improv actor in such a way that then you could use AI to have that scale.
I wish I got to try that experience. It sounds so cool.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will be somewhere else that you'll be soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
So let's talk. So we talked about monetization. There's probably more we should talk about on monetization. Let's dive a little deeper on monetization, because that's always one of the first questions. So we talked about using models that are autonomous, right? That will help on that. Let's talk about throughput. Let's talk a little bit about how do you create experiences so you gave an example where only one person shows up for 7,
right.
But let's talk about the flip side, right? You know, a lot of these experiences right now have anywhere from 1 to 6 to 8 on the high end, right? Coming through. How do we make that broader? Like how do you look at the movie theater economics, which have 300 people, if they're full, which not every theater is always full, but potentially 300 people coming through every 2 hours. How do we look at those economics, and what sort of technology and what sort of advances do we need to get to help us scale?
That's a great question.
Well, I think that it kind of ties in with your last question. You're saying, what do we do to integrate these things? Well, one of the things we've got to really work at integrating with is analog humans.
And it's really all about these humans.
Well, they really are. I mean, VR is full of technologists and futurists. God bless them. But we need some nowists.
Nowists?
Nowists.
Yes, nowists.
I'm coining that term. Nowists.
Trademarked already, nowists.
Yeah.
How many nowists are in the audience? Only a few. How many futurists do we have here? Oh, same people. It's the same people, though.
We need the future now.
Been
How many
planted.
pastists?
Been
Do
planted.
you have any pastists here?
That's right. And so really, when you talk about throughput, I see a lot of great things. When I go to VR trade shows and stuff, and you see this glove or you see this, and they're all great on their own. And yes, we need to integrate the technologies, because the whole is more than the sum of its parts. The effect, it's exponential. But we also need to make sure that we're integrating those technologies not just to hit some ideal holodeck concept, but it needs to still be commercially and practically practicable. So you can have the coolest haptic vest in the world, but if it takes 2 guys 6 minutes to get you into it, you've just killed your throughput. So the stuff that when we talk about throughput and we're talking about technological, syncing the technologies, we have to somehow come up with a way where this works, where humans can get into it, out of it, and through it in a cost-efficient manner. Otherwise, the operators are not interested.
And I'd say, in addition to throughput, making sure capacity utilization is as strong as possible is incredibly important. So you have the perfect location based on the numbers you just shared.
Yeah.
But a lot of operators don't. A lot of operators may be targeting a certain demographic, like millennials or family, and usually they're working or they're in school. So I'm surprised that a lot of people haven't really gone after school groups or boomers for the off-peak times to make sure they're driving capacity utilization then as well.
Yeah, it goes to kind of your comment about content, right? If you can switch over that content, then you're sort of being able to utilize that larger demographic versus one sort of millennial, as you call it, or a boomer. I think the other portion that to throughput, and I think there's a lot of operational things to think about, right? Like you need to clean things, you need headsets. People are weird about things when they eat and they so there's a lot. I think from that perspective, being able to marry the technologies, to your point, is very critical. And we actually use HP backpacks in our system. And I think as part of that, right, there is the whole component of batteries and switching. So I think that there are some operational items to always be constantly thinking about. But I think the technology married with a really good operational model is going to be critical to your point about throughputs and that higher level optimization of the people that are coming through. Because you don't want sort of your attendants on the phone, not engaging with other people and those sorts of things. So those are also very critical things to be thinking about, and how people engage with the humans, or when they come in to actually experience anything you might be doing, whether it's JFK or not, to be able to quickly tell people what the experience is, to pull them in, and then in a very nice way, rotate that customer out with new customers as they come in. So super critical.
Yeah.
And it's not just the human customer that we need to integrate around, but it's those operators. I mean, in a location we're in at a large resort, in Wisconsin, they're bringing in seasonal help. They're bringing in teenagers on 90-day student visas from Eastern Europe, and they have to run 14 VR backpacks. So it's those humans, it's the operators, and like you said, you've got 14 backpacks with 2 batteries each, and they're not going to remember when to change those batteries. You need to have an ops system that basically, puts up on the screen, you need to change the batteries on these computers. And you can't keep moving forward till you do. Yeah. You need to have those things And it's just an important thing. All those little details and they're for the humans is what they're for.
Yeah, and that's part of our job, right? And like in our business is to be able to think about all of those things and present them to, I believe you mentioned business plans, right? So it's our obligation to be able to answer all of those questions, the hygienic questions, all the way to the training. And I think we have an automated training system that we use. We actually use an LMS-based system where people sit down and they go through an entire computer-generated systems learning. But there is that human component, as with anything, that you have to verbally tell me how to do something versus, I was never a good SAT test taker, so I am not a test person. But if you verbally, I could, recite something to you verbally versus something else. So also understanding the complexities of how people learn and interact, both with the headsets, right, backpacks, any sort of haptic vest to your point, or any other item, piece of technology is critical.
So we've addressed a lot of the discussions we had in the audience. Something I want to talk about is around, the panel's called Location-Based Entertainment as a Driver for Consumer Adoption for XR. And so, the terminology, right? And we talked about, how do you tell when people walk by, whether you have brand ambassadors there or you have a sign or how. Let's talk about, and there are a lot of people with marketing backgrounds actually on this panel, which is interesting. It's different than a lot of the panels, right? And so how are we messaging to the world who doesn't come to all these VR and AR conferences that we may all come to, and they're so deep. How are we messaging the experiences? How can we be messaging them better? How we also aren't consistent in our message, from one company to another. So let's talk about that, and what would you guys like to see happen over the next few months and next year?
Yep. Well, I'd say how we're not is how we shouldn't be, although I've seen some ads, is just show the headset. And because no one really knows what it is except for us.
That's right.
But definitely showing what you can experience in it. So I love what people have been doing for a while with green screens, to show an actual human and what you would look like in real life, and them interacting with that other world.
So I definitely agree that it's like around showing, it's around sampling, but like even the words, what are you guys calling what you're when you tell people? Is it a VR experience? Is it XR? Is it hyper reality? What are your thoughts around all of that? What are you guys calling it?
Well, we're calling it virtual reality, but we also have some augmented reality coming in. Our messaging is more about escape. Actually, Periscape means escape within. And that's what I need to do when I'm in an airport, and I figure a lot of other people do as well.
So it's around the experience.
The experience also is in the branding. We don't have repeat customers really in international terminals. It's like, being on a New York street during rush hour, but it's as big as this room. It's so crowded. So we've had we had Gensler design a really beautiful high-end retail-like space, and we've taken a little bit of Terrell and we're beaming lights up to the ceiling, so you really can't miss us. We're popping up in the middle of concessions, and we have a lot of color strips and stuff moving around. And
so you're selling the experience more than the technology, luxury. More than the.
We're selling sort of it's luxury retail, and and we're selling the type of experience where they should just come and get away from the chaos, and we're going to make sure you have a great time.
Yeah, I think it's a really big question. I think that it's not really a consideration typically in technology companies to really take a look at your brand, how you're talking about yourself, what that looks like. We just finished up a bunch of key stakeholder meetings as well as focus groups just to understand how the consumer talks about things. There was a talk earlier, I forget the gentleman's name, so I apologize if he's here, but he did talk about how his product, right, kids call it a hologram, and which everyone in the room cringes. It's not a hologram, but that's what the kids called it, and so they know that is exactly how they should be positioning the product. And so meet people where they are is a common phrase, but meet people where they are and how they accept that type of messaging and how they understand what you're delivering. And experiences are amazing. People want to know more. Like, what are you promising me? And virtual reality. And so I think that really taking a hard look at how we're positioning things in location-based entertainment is incredibly critical to consumer adoption and really getting them in for the first time and again. So
And where to get it
Exactly.
once you're clear on what it is.
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how the Void used hyper-reality, which is not a term, that's really being used in any technical sense to describe any class. But it's something that conveys the concept, and in marketing, sometimes the concept perception is reality. And so it's more important to get the concept across that they're being promised something that's reality plus versus most people would have no clue what the term XR meant. Or even AR, and to a large extent. The media's done a pretty good job. The hype cycle, most people know VR and virtual reality. So meet people where they are. I think that's good advice.
Absolutely.